need to buy yourself a gun. What? Gun? What? Like a handgun for personal protection. If somebody tries to mug you. What? What if your government tries to throw you in a can? What? You're gonna want a shotgun. Oh. What? An automatic rifle and a lot of ammo. Gun?
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Jackbooted cops in riot gear, gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, buy a gun, buy a gun, buy a gun, buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Revolution's not clean and neat. Gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not
PrimerTime on TY.TV. My name is Michael, and I believe we are one step closer to the apocalypse.
I wouldn't say that, but just like the song says, before you lose your Second Amendment.
Buy a gun.
Yeah.
What's up, Nick?
Well, you know, we've had another whirlwind of a week, and as you can tell if you've done anything except for live under a rock, you've seen nonstop coverage of the latest and greatest homicide event. I mean, is it terrorism? Is it a shooting? Is it a this? Is it a hate crime? Go figure, right? So, it's one of those things that I'm just glad that there are many conversations being had out there, for one, but number two, we've got media. I'll call them legacy media personnel, such as Tom Brokaw, calling for a ban on a weapon that doesn't even exist. Which, by the way, Tom Brokaw claimed to be a gun owner right before saying that you should ban the AR-14. I'm with you, Tom. Ban that one all day long.
But we can always expect that from the, as you call it, the legacy media and the new media. And we can also expect it in conjunction with our government officials. Today was another Obama press conference. That's the second in 2 days following this. And, of course, the blame was placed squarely on an inanimate object.
Not only an inanimate object. He firmly placed the blame on what he deemed right-wing media and Republicans. This whole thing was perpetrated by right-wing media and Republicans, to hear him say it.
Okay, so now let's actually take a look at who perpetrated this act. This man's name
is a registered Democrat.
A gay male registered Democrat, because yes, even though he shot up a gay bar, this man was gay. It's been revealed that he dated many drag queens.
Yeah, that is true. Not to mention the fact that
transsexuals. He had all kinds of gay dating apps on his phone. He had the gay dating apps on his phone. He had pictures of him with drag queens. He was recognized by many people at this bar. Yeah, there's a lot we're not being told. The videos are very, very shaky at best. The reporting is crazy. There's a lot of eyewitness accounts. One of them is people inside the bar, so they were trying to make exit through a back door, and
ooh, that was too soon.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was right there, right? but they were trying to make exit through a back door, and they found it was being blocked. And then there's another interview with somebody who says, "Yeah, we got out, then we closed the door so the guy couldn't come in, come after us." And so, I mean, there's all kinds of things there's reports of second and third shooters. Something that I noticed in this incident that through the media coverage and all the videos that have been made of this is if you compare this to the UCLA shooting from just a couple weeks ago, it was 3 hours after the event, and they still had students on their hands or on their knees with their hands behind their heads, and they're searching every one of these. At this event, they have people running all over the place. Nobody's on their hands and knees, and that leads to another issue that I've got with this. I've got a little bit of emergency medical background, so I'm somewhat familiar with these events and the training that goes on with these events. And if there's something like this, EMS is alerted, and there's a large alert for something like this. So you would probably have every available ambulance in the area staging, probably about a mile away, a half a mile away from the event. And then once that's done, they're coming in. There's not going to be people pulling people away. There's not going to be, gay bar goers carrying wounded gay bar people out of there and rolling them around the street in front of cameras to see. That's not how this works. And once again, there was no, police searching of these people like there was at the thing in California, 3 weeks ago. This thing stinks to me. I mean, this is really bad. And then we got the increase in the numbers, right? So there's initially it's reported as 20 people dead, and then all of a sudden there's a jump to 50. And they say that those 30 people died in the ensuing SWAT team shootout with this guy. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's quite a large jump, and I'm wondering how many of these people of these subsequent 30, in addition to the original 20, were actually killed by police in this process, which brings it to another oddity. They say that Orlando, which is one of the major cities in the United States, only had 9 officers on their SWAT team to take this. Now, look, they used 9 cops in Texas to do like a roadside search on somebody who may have a joint in their car. Only 9 cops on a SWAT team. That doesn't sound right to me. Another thing is they said that this guy fired over 1,000 rounds in this event, and the weapons that they state that he used was a Glock 17 and 9mm, and a SIG MCX in 300 Blackout, which is a fairly new rifle. It's fairly expensive. It's not a cheap item. It's probably about $1,400 straight out the box. And the ammo for 300 Blackout, as we've discussed before, is not anything close to inexpensive by any means. And 1,000 rounds of that is, what would you say that weighs, Nick? Probably about 40 pounds?
Oh, yeah. You're not gonna want to carry that in without a backpack, that's for sure.
Not carry it in without a backpack. Another thing, so there's this guy, he's shooting up this club. Do you think that he actually, takes his one magazine out and then reloads that magazine from the big box of bullets?
Of course not.
The bolt has to have magazine, right?
Yeah.
So
he's going to have, and this is in Florida, no less. So there's no requirement for a bullet button or anything like that.
And they can have the the dreaded high capacity clip-zines and all that with 30 caliber bullet, that noise. If we're going to take a look at the number of rounds he fired, which is the last I heard was over 1,000 rounds that they count that he fired. How many 30-round magazines does that take?
I don't know. I'm not a math major. Do the math on that.
33.
There you
33
go. Right?
magazines.
Yep.
33 magazines.
Well, considering that for most active military members,
you carry
can have 7 magazines, which is a standard combat load for 210 rounds. So, do I carry more than that? Absolutely. Is it hard to carry more than 7 magazines? Not at all. Not at all. But is it feasible to carry 30 magazines on your person? If you had a backpack, you could do it fairly easily.
What have you ever been to that allows a man with a backpack in?
Well, and that's the thing. So here's the deal. Here's the way I look at it. This is all preliminary information. You know, a lot of this stuff is going to be reported on. It's going to be retracted. Reports will be redacted.
Well, and now we're going to have to get into something else.
Oh, wait. I'm not finished yet. So
see, no, but this is kind of important, and it relates directly to what you're saying right here, right now. But today, Telemundo had access to the shooter's apartment, just like in San Bernardino, less than 24 hours after a goddamn event. Now, look, I am not a trained investigator by any means, but I understand the meaning of a crime scene from like previous employment. And what you're supposed to do in a crime scene and how a crime scene is processed. This guy just created the largest mass murder in the history of the United States if you exclude the government killing, 180 Indians at Wounded Knee. He just committed the largest mass murder, and his house is done and cleared and searched in less than 24 hours, and Telemundo gets to go in there and, feel the place up. Come on now. Come on,
right? I mean, now, you remember San Bernardino?
Yeah. Let's use San. I mean, the precedent's been set, right?
Yeah. Not only that. I mean, think about it. That's a whole lot less work they have to do if they open it up.
Well, in the end, it just makes whatever they say about this man. The official word about this man has to be correct.
Well, here's the funny thing. So he's got a former wife, and he's got a current wife. The former wife says one thing. The current wife says she knew about this plot, or is at least reported to have said that she knew about this plot, and yet did nothing to stop it or alert authorities or whatnot. So there may be quite a bit more information coming out. And like I said, I agree. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense yet.
There's a lot of dirty information out there as well. There's a website called superstation95.com. That is not a real radio station by any means or any kind of news source. That's very much along the lines of Hal Turner Radio Network, or some of that bullshit that Susan Posel tries to sell to people. There's no truth in anything that's on superstation95.com. But there
I don't even know why you give them the credence of mentioning them, but
because this is what happens in these situations. There's going to be there's going to be the problems with the media information. There's going to be problems with the eyewitnesses and the videos that start disappearing, and the news reports that show fairly odd things in them that don't really reek of a very true event. So you've got to be aware of these things. Now, the focus, of course, has turned to the firearms. And, of course, the firearm is the problem. The inanimate object is the problem. And how did this man get a gun? And he's on the terrorist watch list, and that should immediately mean that he doesn't get a gun. Well, once again, we have to look at this guy. All right, they like to portray him now as a security guard, making him almost sound, at least CNN is making him almost sound like he's a glorified mall cop. Okay, this guy worked for Wackenhut G4S. All right, Wackenhut is a subsidiary of G4S. G4S is one of the largest security contractors in the world. And by security contractor, I mean very, very similar to Blackwater, just much larger and maybe not as involved in the face of war, but they're there. They had the security contract for the 2012 Olympics in London. They had many problems with that. Wackenhut G4S, amongst them, they have enough employees under arms that they are triple the size of the British military, the entire British military, Air Force, Army, Marines, whatever else they got over there. This guy is not just anything because, well, Nick, like you said, Wackenhut G4S is a Defense Department contractor, correct?
Well, they're not necessarily a Defense Department contractor, but they are a contractor for Department of Homeland Security.
And Department of Homeland Security, even better. So that means that this guy's got some sort of security license that would require a federal signature and a federal background check. Is that correct?
Yeah, anytime you're going to go to work for any one of these contractor agencies, you have to be cleared in order to work in certain sensitive areas. So, do I buy the story that this was not somebody who would have been on the radar? Absolutely not.
Well, absolutely, he was on the radar if the FBI had spoken to this guy 3 times prior.
Right, exactly. So here's the thing. This is what I see the real question being, and this is where it comes down to actual due process versus civil liberties versus how much on the side of caution do we err. And he had made some claims, according to FBI agents, that were pretty outlandish. He claimed to be members of Hamas, of Al Qaeda. He says a lot of things. The FBI agents initially, according to Director Comey, have chalked it up to him feeling like he was marginalized at work and was being bullied and was using this as an outlet to get space from his tormentors. Now, going into the rest of the story that people have been talking about, which is, was this guy gay? Was this guy not gay? Doesn't matter. It's immaterial.
It really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all. That's something
unless it influences the narrative that's being portrayed. And here's something that kind of gets into my disintegration of the fabric of society theory that's going on here. I heard about this Sunday morning when it occurred, I guess, and I didn't realize the scope of it when I first heard of it. But later on, it came out that this is a gay bar, and oh my God, there's a lot of people dead, and blah blah blah. And the next thing is that they're pushing this issue that, well, there's just not enough blood for all of these people who are injured, and the evil Red Cross has really made it hard for gay people to donate blood. Well, there's a reason for that. So, I mean, this is kind of a, I don't know, man, maybe you call me crazy or whatever, but this stinks. This comes at a very, very opportune time. It comes just over 24 hours of the release of the information about Raj Fernando. Nick, are you aware of Mr. Raj Fernando?
Didn't he pitch for the Dodgers in 1983 and win the Cy Young Award?
That is not the man we are speaking of. Mr. Raj Fernando is a electronic currency and stock trader. Owns a company called Chopper Inc. And he was recently placed on a National Nuclear Advisory Board position. This is a position that deals with top secret information that deals directly with national security. And it had come to light midnight on Friday, 001 hours on Saturday morning, that Mr. Raj Fernando had been a donor to the Clinton campaign of $250,000, along with several emails saying, how did this guy get here? How do we cover up how we got this guy here? What do we say? And then followed by the man's resignation from it. It really looks dirty. It looks a hell of a lot like Hillary Clinton sold interest in the nation at a time of war. And I think that, this goes above and beyond the emails and wipe it with a cloth and all that, because to me, I think that was probably like maybe 30 years in jail and, a couple $1 million fine or something. I think the selling of the seat of interest here during a time of war, I think that necessitates a firing squad.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that kind of.
No, I'm not. But I mean, that's what it would be, right? I mean, this is that exact kind of an issue. And now,
not for a government official. You got to remember, not for a government official. You might get a slap on the wrist. You might get a fine. You're not going to get anywhere near that kind of punishment.
Correct, but anybody else would get that sort of punishment. But this comes at the time in probably one of the most contentious presidential elections right now. This is definitely something that would sink any other candidate other than Teflon Hillary. And there's not another word about it. Now we're focusing on did the AR-15 do it? Is it because the AR-15's black? Why?
Well, so like I said, and hear me out here for a second. Don't.
Sorry.
Don't cut me off.
Sorry.
So here's the thing. You have the president who takes every opportunity to talk about gun control, and as is his prerogative to do. He sets an agenda for his administration, and his minions in and amongst the government agencies go forth and do great things to pursue his agenda. Whether they do it, correctly or by following the Constitution is of no consequence to him. He's still going to tell people to go out and do certain things. He's still going to go out and tell attorneys general not to prosecute certain things and prosecute other things with extreme prejudice. So that isn't a surprise. Whether or not you're going to get a president to go on, national television on prime time and say, look, the fact is undeniable. This individual was this, and was this. That won't happen. And one of the things that he mentioned today during an interview, I think is very telling, because he addressed something that a lot of people have been saying and talking about, his inability to really call things what they are. Mainly talking about terrorism in the Islamic context, meaning, what I think that the term is radical Islam or fundamentalist Islam. I'd like to take a moment for the folks that really don't understand Islam to understand one thing. Every single one of us not operating under their set of operating instructions is a infidel. And those of you who happen to be Muslim and are not operating the same way they are an apostate. And unfortunately, we are to meet the same death. So I think that it's one thing to get in an argument with somebody and really go out and start leveling accusations. I think you have to level the playing field by understanding a certain set of definitions. And number one is that as a tenet of the faith, you have to commit jihad. You have to commit yourself to jihad. And that's what going out and smiting the infidel means, to go out and kill them and slay them where they lie. That's written down. It's not really open for interpretation. There hasn't been a reformation inside of Islam. There's only been a schism.
Well, but now I'm gonna have to take the devil's advocate position in this, and I'm gonna say the translation.
No. I'm gonna tell you right now. Translation aside, doesn't matter, because that is very, very clear. So you can attempt to say, hey, I'm going to say, well, it's a translation. Michael, there has been no reformation. This isn't the Catholics versus the Protestants. It doesn't operate like that.
I understand.
Both sides of the house.
It's a culture. It is a culture that is foreign to many people raised in the Western Christian nations. We've been dealing with this since Thomas Jefferson's time. This is not the first time the Americans have gone to war with Islamics. To a point. No, not to a point. Not to a point. And back then, it was terrorism just the same as it is now. The only thing that was doing was that they were hijacking and ransoming for American shipping and American naval ships, in addition to the merchant ships that were transiting through. 1800s, the Barbary Coast invasion.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to speak back something a little bit closer than that. Like in our time in our youth, say in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right, but my point is that this is nothing new. You got to remember that.
Absolutely, I'm going to agree with you that it's nothing new.
Right, this is nothing new, and not only that, to use an axiom.
It's not our place. It's not our place.
Listen to me, okay? The axiom that is used most often, and like I said, I can tell you from my time in Afghanistan, the words that are often muttered are, the Americans may have the watches, but we have the time. And that's very telling, because in these portions of the world, they have all the time in the world. They just have to wait us out. And they know that they will, because you know what? They're not going anywhere. And they know we will eventually tire of wasting money, of wasting resources, and wasting lives. And that's what it comes down to. Now,
I can see their point.
Yeah. Now, back to my point of, what it is that we face. You have to look objectively at it. If you take an example of all the latest folks who have been involved and committed a crime by committing shootings, and not only that, breaking a litany of laws along the way, you have to look at them individually, or can you look at them as a whole? I would say you can't look at them as a whole, because you have people from many different backgrounds.
You can only look at them as criminal.
Right. That's the only way that I think you
that's
can
the only
lump them
assignment
in.
you can make to
I
them.
think you can only lump them in as criminals, and that can be the only category that there's a lot of common denominators. When it comes down to, say, like this guy versus the guy who did the shooting with his wife in San Bernardino, there's a couple different common denominators. But, the one thing that a lot of people like to hit on, and whether it's Jew, whether it's Christian, whether it's Asian, there's a lot of victims that are out there. One of the victims of the shooting was an Army officer. So I think that this goes across all boundaries. It goes across all ethnic groups. It goes across all walks of life. But the fact of the matter remains is that you have an administration that even went on so far as to go on television and say, it doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what we call things. The president said specifically, not a single one of my advisors had said, we could really get a handle on this if we just called it radical Islam. And that's one of the things, like I said, I just like to point this out for the fact that going back to the Korean War, General Matthew Ridgway, who was pretty much the savior of American forces after the near collapse of morale and everything else after the death of Walton Walker, who was a very popular general. He kind of said it first. He said, there has to be a limited objective. There has to be a clearly defined end state in order for us to be militarily successful. And I can tell you that those words are not being heeded. And when it comes to being successful...
I'm going to have to disagree with you right there. I think those words are being heeded, but not in the military sense. I think those words are being heeded by our government against the people.
Okay.
I'm
talking specifically to deter further attacks. Okay. This is what our government is instituted among men for, is to provide for the common defense. And the common defense does not mean that you institute a policy of importing the world's terrorists without screening them and calling them refugees. So, the first thing that somebody's going to say to mine is, oh, you're a xenophobe. Well, what do we call that? We call that the ad hominem attack, because you're attempting to draw away from my credibility by leveling a charge or accusation against me. So let's get that out of the way.
The actual issue at hand.
Right. Let's get that out of the way. So the fact of the matter remains is that quite a few of these things are going to happen in the future, regardless of whether they use the AR-15, whether they use a SIG 5.56, whether they use an MCX, whether they use a Ruger rifle. It doesn't matter. The problem,
and it just doesn't have to be a firearm. We've seen it before. Not too long ago in Las Vegas, there was a woman who drove up and down the strip, and she run over 14 people, killed like 5.
Right. And we just had the same thing in Michigan, where a person in an automobile struck and killed 5 cyclists. Let's not forget that quite a few things happened to let's say New York City, where there was the mass stabbings that occurred a few summers back.
If we want to, we can go back to the Happy Land Social Club fire that killed 150 people, and it was done with less than $4 worth of equipment. It was a gallon of gas and a road flare, and I think he used a piece of broomstick to lock a door.
Yeah, well,
and
like I said, here's let me take issue with something. I don't know if you remember President Obama a few months back saying that these types of mass killings just don't happen in the developed world. Well, mass killings happen in California. In Canada. Mass killings happen in Norway. Mass killings happen in China. There's quite a few places across the world with developed nations that experience the same level or even more, because, oh, by the way, the mass shooting that occurred with the combination of bombings and shootings in Norway, I believe killed over 70 people. So, this isn't a race to see who gets the most mass murders or the most numbers. What the fact of the matter remains is that there are people who are bent on doing evil things. And you have to prudently look into them, and you have to take the necessary precautions. Do I believe that if you put this guy on a no-fly list, that he shouldn't have been allowed to purchase a handgun or purchase a rifle?
If he's bad enough to be on the no-fly list, why isn't he in jail?
Well,
why?
That's
If he's on the no-fly list, how does he pass this federal background check? If he's on the no-fly list, how does the FBI meet with him 3 times and proceed to allow him to do whatever he does?
not only that, how does he pass the background check when he uses the firearm?
Let me say this. Let's say you get a parking ticket, all right, and you forget about that parking ticket and you don't pay it, all right, and let's say it goes to warrant status and you don't know if it goes to status. It's out there, and you go in to buy a firearm, and I'll tell you, one of the companies, it's a big box retailer in the United States, Academy Sporting Goods. Their policy is to, if that sale comes back denied, they're supposed to call the police, and they're supposed to delay you while the police show up, and they'll do that for somebody who's got a traffic ticket. All right, if that's the procedure for that,
shop at Academy,
and that's something else we can get at, because right here, in the wake of this event, of course, we've got the knee-jerk reaction going on from every level, from the media, from our government, and now from the corporate world. Academy has taken all of the modern sporting rifles, which would be everything that is semi-automatic that has a detachable magazine, taking them off the shelves. That doesn't mean they're not selling them. They're just taking them out of public view. Cabela's and Gander Mountain have also removed AR-15s in the modern sporting rifle family off of their website. Once again, I believe they're still selling them. They're just not showing them in public.
I'll have to go. I will actually do some field research, and I will visit my local GM and go out and see what they have on the shelf. I will tell you that as of Friday, prior to this, they had plenty of ARs and modern sporting rifles on the shelf.
What I did a little bit of field research today, and I went to a gun shop, and I went to a smaller, privately owned gun shop. It's not part of a chain or anything. It's a guy who's a veteran-owned business, and he's got a gun shop, and he's got pretty good prices and stuff. He's not necessarily the biggest guy out there. He's maybe I've seen before today. The most I've ever seen in his store was like maybe 7 people. Today there was 30 people.
Oh, he was doing some banging up business.
And he actually imposed some limits. A guy came in and tried all of his AR-15 magazines today, and he said, "No, man, I've got a lot of customers. I'll sell you like 3 or 4 of them, but I can't sell you all of them." And the guy got kind of cranky. He was moving 5.56 like you couldn't believe. 308 was going, 9mm 45 was going. 22 Magnum is just about out of everywhere right now. I did see our favorite company to hate, Cheaper Than Dirt, which is lower than dirt. Once again, raised the price on all their NATO magazines, the AR-15 magazines. They are now $50 a piece for a used one with a green follower.
Yeah, it's like I said, going.
And
to
it's
the,
part of the reaction, because we can see that with the head of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, who now says that gun control is a Homeland Security initiative. It's something that directly relates to the safety of the nation. And I think this merits a little bit of discussion right here.
Yeah, well, and like I said, it helps to know who you're dealing with. So for those of you who don't know, Jay Johnson is a lawyer who's been turned into an administration cabinet holder. So he's Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. In his former digs, he was the lawyer who was charged by the Senate to basically get the Don't Ask, Don't Tell law that Clinton instituted overturned through the Department of Defense. So, this guy is a administration veteran. He'll just go in front of the camera and pretty much say whatever. So his statement was that passing gun control is now a national security matter. So, here's what I'd like to say is that the government, which is basically responsible to protect the citizenry, is under this administration going to attempt to protect the citizenry by removing the citizens' right to protect themselves. So, yeah, it's circular logic. It doesn't pass common sense tests. I've got no faith that the Secretary of Homeland Security, who is actually, the way I look at it, failing his job miserably, because of
Well, in
these
the-
types
in
of things
the
keeps
end-
happening.
In the end, wouldn't the head of Homeland Security somehow be this guy's ultimate boss, considering that he contracts to them?
Yeah, if he was,
Or
if he wasn't, he wouldn't be his boss. He would be the boss of the folks that have that contract.
Well, I mean, what was the famous statement? The buck stops here.
Oh
I
no,
guess
you're not. No, the buck doesn't stop here. That was Harry.
that no longer applies. I see.
Yeah, that doesn't fly. That just won't do around here.
Well, and then this is also brought to light the argument of the terrorist watch list, and if you're on the terrorist watch list, can you have a firearm? And I've got mixed feelings about this because in theory, no, you shouldn't, but in practice, the terrorist watch list, no-fly list, is a gigantic mess. It has no rhyme nor reason. There's no legal precedent. There's no legal remedy to this. They can just say you're on it. You could possibly have been a visitor to a self-radicalizing website, and now you're on that list. You could be a veteran
either,
and you will not know it. So, and you could be a veteran, and you can be on that list. An honorably discharged veteran with combat experience, fought for this nation.
Definitely, they're going to want you on that one.
You could be somebody who believes in the Constitution and has said that out loud, and you could be on that list.
Which, by the way, is every single member of the Department of Defense.
Right, and there's no rhyme, no reason. If you're placed on this list, there's no way to come off of it. There's no way to appeal it. There's no way to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you got the wrong guy." No, I'm sorry, that's the other Otto von Bolschwing. No, I don't. It doesn't happen like that. So I think the knee-jerk reaction of, we have to pass this law so we can, take people off the, eliminate their right to buy a firearm if they're on the terrorist watch list. I think this is very, very sneaky. And
no, and that's the thing. The senators that are pushing this, the states that are pushing this, they operate on the fear principle, and the fear is strong enough within certain regards right now to say, hey, we're going to eliminate this from happening in the future by taking such drastic steps now. That's never been prudent. It hasn't been prudent in anything. And when you look at it like this, the going back to the actual event, you have what is, like I said, regardless of what the facts may be and what we find them out to be later being different, you have an individual who is said to have gone into a building that is a drug and gun-free zone, and
it's a gay bar. It's not a drug-free zone.
You know what I mean? Whatever. So, but the point is that it is a gun-free zone, and it's a large target population that he had of people who typically don't take the time to protect themselves. My question is, in all of this, is that regardless if this is Islamic terrorism, regardless if this is a hate crime, regardless if this is a mental health issue, regardless if this is just a psychopath who's bent on killing people, does this spur people in the gay community to go out and arm themselves? Does this drive a batch of concealed carry permit applications by people who now figure out that, sequestering ourselves into our own little enclaves and our own little cliques of society will not protect us?
Are you implying that safe spaces do not actually exist?
Say that again?
Are you implying that safe spaces do not actually exist?
Absolutely is what I'm not even implying. I think I'm coming out directly and saying
you are.
There are no. If you can't be safe in RuPaul's drag show, where can you be safe? Because you know what? You can't be safe in an airport. You can't be safe at a meet and greet with a congressman. You can't be safe at a school. You can't even be safe
in your own home because a police officer has the wrong address and you will come out and he'll shoot you.
Exactly. So here's my thing, is that aside from all that, you have a large population of people who typically vote one side, typically have a very strong opinion in favor of gun control. Do you think this is a catalyst to change that opinion? Do you think that a certain segment of the population will change their opinions and views and say, you know what, I depended on the police to save me, and they weren't able to do that. 50
Well, I mean,
people died
there's
in a certain span of time, and no one was able to do anything.
There's a current Supreme Court ruling, or not current, but a Supreme Court ruling that says that the police actually have no duty to defend you. Is that correct?
Well, like I said, I'm not going to paraphrase that one, but you know, I think it just goes back to the same thing that everybody always hears, is that when seconds count, the police are minutes away. You know, the police have a duty to protect the public and serve the public is what we used to be told. Now it's the police have a duty to kind of get there and possibly, you know, get a CSI team out there to clean up and take some evidence, swabs and samples, and
make sure you assess some fines and pass out some tickets and possibly shoot a dog.
Yeah, you know, whatever. So the thing that I'd like to see is that, you know, unfortunately, the individual who was responsible for this won't stand a trial. You know, he's dead. He's been executed.
And actually, that's kind of convenient and sort of endemic to these situations that lead to a lot of questions, just like the San Bernardino incident. There's a lot of questions that could have been answered if that guy wasn't dead.
Well, not only that,
there's a lot, and once again, that incident has a myriad of questions surrounding it, just like this one. And here's something that I'm going to take from a noticing society standpoint. If this is happening, this incident happened at a gay bar on some sort of salsa competition night, you know, there's a striking lack of selfies and videos of this event from, well, honestly, from a gay bar. I mean, you know, that's what they do. They take pictures and stuff, right?
I don't know. I can't affirm that.
No, I mean, I can't either. But I mean, what I'm saying is, you know, this is the culture that we have, and I'm going to guess that a good number of the patrons that went to that bar had Facebook or the social media accounts, Instagram, whatever all that stuff is. And there haven't been a whole lot of pictures of, oh my God, I've seen one video that was in the bar, and it just had gunfire in the background. There was nothing incriminating. Now, if there's, you know, 100 victims to this event, that means there was a lot of people in this thing. There was 1,000 rounds being fired. You know, people had time to send text messages saying that. I would almost think that in this same culture that's obsessed with sending your last text message before you're, you know, killed by a raving gay Arab, that somebody would possibly also take
video. Get that straight. He's not an Arab. He's an Afghan.
That's right.
Very big difference. No, Afghani is the currency. Afghan is the nominative name for the person.
Okay, so yeah, Omar Siddiqui Mateen is his name, and to me that almost sounded like just because of the Siddiqui, it almost sounded like an Iraqi name.
Yeah, but you know, you got to remember, you know, that whole empire stretched from one side of the Mediterranean all the way through Central Asia.
Right.
So
I don't know. This stinks, and it furders the goal of the anti-gun forces.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know the funny thing is that where I work, I don't get to have a phone at my desk. I don't get to watch a lot of TV. I, you know, have to enter a secure facility and come out of a secure facility. But we do get a feed that comes in, and I'll tell you that you have officially made, you know, a status when Anderson Cooper reports live wearing a polo shirt from right out in front of your facility. So, you know, this is the thing. It's that shootings occur.
It was
shootings have always occurred.
Like a funeral on CNN. They had every gay anchor that they got, which is all of them except two, I think, and it was just nonstop crying.
Oh well, I mean, you know, you got to look at this from just a personable person standpoint. You don't wish for your fellow American to meet his end or meet their fate that way. I don't. I certainly don't. And I'll tell you what, for the amount of time that I've served, Michael, for the amount of time that I've served in the military, Whether I agree with your personal politics, whether I agree with your personal decisions, the job I do is to make sure that in this country that you are free to do and act as you want. I may not agree with it. I may think it's personally repulsive. But you know what? What I signed up to do was to protect every single American citizen's right to do and be who they want to be. Doesn't mean that I have to agree with it. Doesn't mean that I have to be down with it. Doesn't mean that I have to sit there and drink the Kool-Aid and what our government wants us to say. No, I am a free thinker. I'm able to sit there and take words and actions and make them into things of substance. But I'll tell you this: people that want to go out and commit crimes, whether they're black, white, purple, polka dotted, are going to find their ways to do it. This individual just wanted to do it.
I was trying to get at is that it's not just the crime, and I agree with you that the guy's going to take every opportunity to do whatever crime is in his heart. But there's also the concept of do not let the crisis go to waste.
Oh no, and that's separate, altogether.
But it's separate, but they're both being wound very close together.
Oh well, but Michael, that's an agenda. That's nothing independent of this guy committing the crime, because by the way, it's not like he purchased the weapons illegally. He purchased the weapons legally. So
absolutely.
So obviously he did things the way that his individual state has said, this is the way you must purchase these firearms. He did it within accordance with that. He passed his background checks. He was clean. He had zero derogatory information that would have caused them to prohibit him from owning a firearm. So
he had zero derogatory information other than the fact that the FBI had interviewed him 3 times.
That in itself is not derogatory. So I'll tell you, it's discriminatory. It's discriminatory, but it's not derogatory.
Are we at war right now? See, that's kind of the question.
That's a very broad term. You've got to, just like I said, you have to have a limited scope, and you have to have a defined enemy. We can't even get our administration to say who we are fighting. They're saying we are fighting ISIS. ISIS could be one of 15 different terror organizations across the world.
And honestly, in the end, we're fighting an emotion, because you just said it. It's terror, and terror is only an emotion.
No, terror is not an emotion.
You feel terror.
Yeah,
you feel terror.
Terror is the act of inciting others to do as you want them to do by the threat or intimidation of violence.
That's terrorism. If you look up, that's the current definition of the word terrorism. The former definition of the word terrorism was a system of government based upon threats and coercion and things like that. But it's not the war on terrorism; it's the war on terror, and terror is emotion. Yeah, and your emotions are your enemy.
Well, it's not only that. You can't. That's like saying, "Hey, we're going to have a war on sadness."
And if we had a war on sadness, as we have had wars on everything else, our war on poverty, our war on drugs, the war on terror, that means everybody will be very, very sad very soon.
Well, I'm just. I wanted to get out there and say, 21 years ago tomorrow, I shipped out from Tucson, Arizona to begin a career that's lasted, and it's one of those things where over 21 years, my personal feelings haven't necessarily evolved, because I've always been a believer in the right to defect and to protect and defend myself. And my family and my belongings, but I've seen the opinions of those around me in the small segment of the population that is the United States military. A lot of their opinions have changed. It used to be something in the early 90s. You couldn't own an AR-15 because of the crime ban, the crime bill that had the assault weapons ban in there. And, whether that wasn't a misnomer again from the very beginning, because an assault weapon is something that is largely considered to have a select fire capability, what ended up being an AR-15 and AK-47 ban, or a semi-automatic rifle ban. So, now I'll tell you, more and more, I'm seeing individual soldiers, both men and women, None of the transgendered yet, because I don't think we have any of those floating around where I work. But they are coming up to me because they know that I'm a very respectable guy, I'm a very well read guy, and I'm very knowledgeable about the topics that I speak. And I've got people as young as 24, 25 coming up to me, and as old as 38, 40 years old coming up to me and saying, "Hey, would you mind sitting down with me?"
Those old fuckers at 58, Jesus.
Yeah, I know. You have to take a little bit more time with them, and you have to speak louder. Yeah, you have to make it through the ear hair. But no, there's a generational gap for sure. But I think with each passing day, folks are getting wise, and they're saying, you know what? Our government can't protect us. The Department of Homeland Security has seen that our homeland is not secure. There is no way that you can convince me that at any one point in your day, unless you work in a secure facility, and even if you look at the Navy Yard shooter, that's not necessarily the case, that you could be safe 100% of the time. And I think that's one of those things that when you look at the differences on our college campuses and high school campuses, you've got folks that are physically and visually shaken by opposing viewpoints. I don't know if you saw the news report, but the president or chancellor of DePaul University in Chicago stepped down because of a conservative who happens to be a gay individual, Milo Yiannopoulos, had a speech at DePaul, and in the middle of the speech was, the stage was rushed and put an end to that event. But the chancellor president has stepped down because he said that his approval of having an alternative viewpoint has marginalized the students at DePaul University. This is where we are in 2016, and very shortly thereafter, you will see that the system will begin to collapse under its own weight. You've got a population and a generation of students.
It's collapsing as it is now.
Right.
I mean,
Michael,
the
you know what? When you and I went to school, people were ridiculed. People either stood up for themselves or people took the abuse. People took the abuse under the hopes that in 10, 15 years, they would be out earning the people who were their tormentors. And look at the satisfaction they would have at that point. Now, you've got people who cannot take an alternative viewpoint, and they do not want you to have the freedom to speak how you want. That's a problem.
There was a saying that we both kind of grew up with, and it was, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me."
That was almost like a mantra, I think.
And now that no longer applies. Now those words are, boy, they cut like a knife. You've invaded my safe space. I'm fully triggered, and my jimmies are rustled.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Do we go forward? Are we going to be what I will say the children of the '60s were to the greatest generation? Are our children and the children in this current generation coming up? Is that what we're going to?
It's called Generation Snowflake.
Yeah,
it's called now.
I believe it. I believe it because I will tell you that the people from my generation,
you are special and unique, just like everybody else.
Right, exactly. So the people in my generation, which was largely considered Generation X, we've got 15 years of sustained combat under our belt. Not to say that the greatest generation didn't do that, but they didn't. They were able to go to war on 3 different continents and pretty much, do what they had to do in order to get the job done. But they didn't do it for 15 years.
Right. But and then that gets into something else. Maybe that's not. They did get the job done, and you have to honor their service. But maybe that job didn't necessarily need to be done because it's put us where we are now. Decades and decades upon decades of endless wars that are not necessarily meant to be won, but meant to be fought and expended upon. Lives that are real.
I'll tell you right there. You say a lot of things about wars that weren't meant to be won. I'm pretty sure we definitively won World War II with the help of the Russians in the East and allies on the European theater, but certainly through our own means, ending World War II in the Pacific. I think that there can be no mixed words when it comes to that was a complete and total surrender by the Imperial Japanese forces.
Absolutely, but then you go a couple years after that, and we absolutely obliterated North Korea. We destroyed North Korea.
We destroyed North and South Korea.
We destroyed North and South Korea. Absolutely. I mean, seriously, in North Korea, what is it? They said that there was like 98% of everything that was destroyed. Dirt roads were destroyed. Wells were destroyed. Ditches were destroyed. I mean, there was nothing higher than like a foot and a half off the ground. Everything was rubble.
Yeah, certainly. The entire peninsula was deforested below China.
And so, I mean, if you get into that situation, I mean, there's if you can't fight that war to win that, maybe there's a whole different approach that has to be taken. But in that process of absolutely obliterating North Korea and South Korea, there was a lot of money spent. There's a lot of money,
but you know what?
And
when it comes down
and
to
that kind of leads to that idea of, well, if we keep that perpetual war going, we make perpetual money.
Well, and that's why Eisenhower came out afterwards and said, you know what, we got to watch out of the industrial military complex. So, you know, here's the thing: I don't fault the people for going to war in World War II, because you know what, there was a lot of circumstances that led up to that out of World War I. But when it comes to what the achievements are of this generation, there is a gap between those who have served in these last 15 years and what's called, you know, the war on terror. There's a gap between those who have served and those who have sat idly by. And I can say it's the same thing for the folks who participated in Vietnam and those who had deferments and were sitting in colleges or you know, as sons and daughters of senators and other elected representatives, just like it was, you know, every subsequent war since World War II, because I can say with at least World War II was the last time we had a nation that was unified and everybody pulled together in order to support.
That was also the last time we had a nation where the propaganda was universal and people absolutely hate propaganda.
Yeah.
And now we're not like that. People are seeing the lies now.
Yeah.
And honestly, how many times are you going to be lied to before you won't be lied to anymore?
Well, I'll tell you what we're not going to lie about, and that's going to be the 4 rules of gun safety.
Absolutely not. That is an issue that is absolute truth. And the first rule of firearm safety is every firearm is loaded until you physically and visually inspect and ensure that it is not. So go ahead and open up that safety, crack that action open, flip open that cylinder, remove that magazine, draw that slide back, make sure there's nothing in there. Rule number 2 is keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction. Do not cover anything you do not wish to destroy. Rule number 3 is know what is your target and know what is beyond your target at all times. And rule number 4, the most important issue, keep your booger hook off the bank switch until you're ready to discharge the weapon. Keep your finger out of the trigger guard, off the trigger until you are ready to fire the weapon. Yep. Right now, we're in a tight spot. People are screaming for massive gun control. I mean, proposals have been to the elimination of all semi-automatics and anything that takes a detachable magazine. So don't give these guys any sort of extra ammo in this fight, and it's a fight coming up. The rush is on. So yeah, like the song says, by a band called the Gitmos. They're available on SoundCloud. Buy a gun. Buy some ammo. Buy some magazines.
Buy magazines to buy ammo. Don't. If you've already got a functional firearm, stock up.
Get yourself some ammo. I mean, it's going to be a rush, very similar to 2013. I mean, it's already started. There's no 22 mag in my area.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, for those of you who don't know, this is the 241st anniversary of the founding of the United States Army out of the Continental Army. So June 14th is widely referred to as Flag Day. It is the Army birthday.
Absolutely. And just on a couple, I got to give a couple personal shouts. Everybody in the Brazoria County area who has been devastated by floods, y'all stay safe. And I've got to give a special shout out to a friend of the show, Cracker. He's a good man. He's kind of got some got a hard time going on, man. I'm hoping for the best for you, man. Yeah. I know everything's going to work out.
Cracker, hope things get better. I'd like to say thanks to Jules, thanks to all our faithful listeners in chat. And we'd like to do this again next week.
Absolutely, Nick. I enjoy it. Everybody, UCY.TV, the only place you're going to get this stuff. Honestly, nobody else.